Serious? Those who've explored abandoned buildings that went seriously wrong. What happened? Drunk and lonely in Korea, wandered into an abandoned construction site that I hadn't seen anyone working on all winter. The night air is cold and frigid and there's echoes of cars passing by. Using the light of my old crappy phone I walk inside. Look around. The place is empty and I'm too drunk to be scared. Stumble upstairs, wandering around. Slip because I'm drunk and my butt hits the concrete and I drop the phone and I'm in total darkness. I reach over, pick up the phone and see that right in front of me, where I was walking, the ground gave way to a 10-foot drop, at the bottom of which are a series of rebar bars jutting out of the concrete. I could have stumbled and impaled myself on them easily. Holy crap, that's terrifying. The realization that hey, I almost died horribly just now is a mindfuck. I used to go through abandoned buildings with my dad, a fireman in near west suburban Chicago. We ran into a bunch of homeless guys burning the coating off wire. My dad and the police moved them on from the building. Later that night they were doing the same in another building down the block, which led to a 3-alarm fire and 2 abandoned factories burning to the ground. Copper thieves are a serious problem in my city as well. The stench of burning plastic can be suffocating some nights. When I was a teenager and some friends and I had nowhere to live, we found an abandoned house in a fairly dodgy suburb to live in. One of the people I was with said it used to be a drug dealer's place and he had left town indefinitely, so we figured we would be safe to squat there for a while. It had super high fences which we had to climb to break in through the back door, and the first thing we saw was an old dog chain that had been snapped and there was dried blood around it on the concrete. It's not super relevant, but it gives you an idea of how grungy the place looked. We all slept in one bedroom out the back that had no front-facing windows, and when we left during the day, we would hide our backpacks in the ceiling through a hole we found. At night we kept all the lights off. One night we got awoken by a massive banging on the front door, like really loud thumping that reverberated through the entire house. Think like if the cops were desperately trying to get the attention of someone in an apartment. There was nothing shouted, so we knew it wasn't police. We just stayed as quiet as we could until it went away. The next morning when we left there was a huge knife shoved through the wood at the front, embedded halfway down the blade. We left it there. The girl that was with us decided it was not safe there, so she took off the next day. I don't remember where she went, but she didn't come back. She probably went to one of the shelters in the city. Me and the remaining guy went out a day or two later to get some food, and when we got back, we found that the windows had all been smashed in by rocks thrown through the windows. The remaining furniture had been trashed, beds flung onto their sides, couches pushed apart with their cushions ripped. Someone had clearly been looking for something. We said frick it, booked it out of there and moved to a park. Way more open, but significantly less terrifying. I really hope you're no longer homeless and life has gotten better for you all. Went to an abandoned water park with some photography buddies. Crawled through the hole in the fence, opened the front door and a cop was just sitting at the desk like he was here to give us pool passes. Yes, he was a real cop. He called for another unit to come to us and then they just asked us what and why we were there, then let us go on our day. Not in the water park sadly. The creepy question is, what was he doing there? Some friends and I went exploring in an old abandoned slave church in the deep South Georgia woods. There were graves dug up in the cemetery and the church itself was all falling apart. There was one hallway with a room in the back that had the door cracked. I was the first one in the hallway and as I got to the door to the room in the back, I heard someone in the room go shh. Went to turn and run out of there but my GF at the time was leaned against the wall in a daze looking at the ground. I had to grab her hand and pull her to get her going. It was weird. Born and raised in the deep south, we had some old slave buildings and a small graveyard far back in the wooded area of our property. I don't know if the supernatural is real, but one thing I can tell you for certain, do not frick with old slave stuff. Flat and ope. My friend almost fell off a 4-story building. There were 4 of us out at an abandoned radar base filming a music video for one of my classes, and there is a part where you can jump down from the roof to another part that is slightly lower. Now it's a more narrow kind of landing area, and as he jumped down, he landed weird on his foot and swerved off to the side and was less than an inch or so from falling off before he caught his balance and landed on his knees on the roof. Everyone else carefully climbed down that ledge instead of jumping after that. My hands started to clam up reading this. As kids, my cousin and I went exploring in an abandoned old church. He, being the more adventurous of the two, had decided to go climbing and seeing if he could get on top of the roof. Well, it wasn't exactly stable, and luckily he didn't get all the way to the top when he fell. He copped a nasty gash on his leg in the process, and it was a long walk back to our grandmother's house to get it tended to, purely because we kept stopping. Needless to say, we were banned from exploring since. While exploring an abandoned warehouse that we always used to go to as kids, we found a filming crew one night. As we were passing the campus where the actors stay, the cops pulled up and chased us into the bush. Turns out they were filming a scene for IT Chapter 2. Now when we go to the warehouse, all we can think about is that dang clown. That's actually pretty cool. Not seriously wrong, but I was pretty scared. I was around 10 years old or so. I went into this not that old abandoned building with two of my friends. They were boys. We explored the building and got down to the basement, and we met some boys from 9th grade and we went with them. We got pretty deep into the basement and then all of a sudden a woman starts to scream. We couldn't see anybody since it was very dark. We had flashlights and flashed around the room. Keep in mind I was the only girl with the group of boys and my friends. We just ran out after that as the screaming continued. We all agreed to never enter again. Depending on where in the country you are, there's a good chance you were hearing a fox. They're known for having a call that sounds a ton like a woman screaming. It was a really old house in the woods. Pretty sure there was a fire or something because there was a stone slab and chimney next to the house where a place used to be with fire damage. 3 of us wanted to see what was in the place, so we started exploring. Some ruined furniture was still there and moth-eaten carpet. Coolest thing in there was an old wooden chair with some impressive carving work. We ventured upstairs and that is when things went wrong. 2 steps in and creak crack, the floor split open and my buddy's leg went through. Lucky for him he had jeans on and nothing got broken. We decided not to check out the rest of the place and made our way out of the woods before it got dark. I was walking through the 4th floor of an abandoned orphanage in the chapel, and the only light I had to guide me was faint from the video camera, before smartphones, and as I pointed it down to routinely light the floor to check, I was a foot away from stepping into a giant hole in the floor almost 2 meters wide, dropping down below. My heart dropped and then a freaking bat flew overhead of me and scared the crap out of me as well. Explored an abandoned school. The place was boarded up, so we technically had to break in, but the roof was caving in and the power was cut. We got into the gym and triggered an alarm that was apparently on some kind of backup power, and we all had to squeeze through a small opening row rush back out. We used to play Airsoft King of the Hill games in an old early 1900s mansion that had been abandoned since the 80s in the Illinois cornfields. We never went deep into the basement because it was partially flooded and at the same time gave everyone a very weird feeling when we would get to the bottom of the steps. Well, one day we decided to play a night game and the whole vibe of the house was off. It felt like there was someone standing right behind you the entire time, and we kept hearing noises and sloshing water coming from the basement, so we booked it out of there, and as we were leaving we all swear we saw light come on really quick up in the attic and then go dark. This is like that moment in scary movies where the main characters could just leave and the movie would be over, but instead they stay. Good idea leaving. Took 2 steps into the doorway and a gigantic banana spider crawled right onto my face. I knocked myself backwards out of the place, just hitting myself in the face to get it off. After that I decided that was enough of that noise. Nothing went wrong per se, but the whole building was caved in. Small house around 100 years old, except for one room, a child's room that seemed almost untouched. The walls still pink, glass chandelier hanging from the ceiling. It was creepy given the rest of the house was completely fallen apart, you couldn't make out the rooms. So this happened 1 year ago. I was with my best friend at a pretty known abandoned house in my city. Almost every weekend we would go there, have fun and drink. Nobody was interrupting us. But one night as we entered, we noticed some homeless people walking around and yelling. At that point we knew that we should get out of there. The problem was that those guys already saw us and started chasing us. Not running, but still. Him and I decided to run and hide in a bus station nearby. After 10 minutes the homeless guys were around the corner of the street and holding some kind of knife. There were 4 guys. It was 11 at night, so we got really scared and went to one of my friend's house 500 meters from there. We called the police and it turns out that those dudes have been stealing in buses and doing this kind of stuff all over the city. I was pretty scared from that situation. Whoa. Friend of mine got an urbex tip about an abandoned military munitions storage. Wide open gate, no locks. Drove right in. Found these grass covered bunkers. Empty inside, but very cool and creepy. Took some great pictures. All of a sudden a helicopter flies by. Low. Strange, but not that strange. My friend gets really spooked though. Looked like a police chopper. He insists we pull the truck into the bunker to hide in case it comes back. I pull the truck in, and sure enough it comes back. We all duck into the bunker, and this thing drops into a low hover, right above us. Spotlight shining on the bunker door. We are completely fricked. After a few minutes we all agree this is it. Squad car must be coming. Life is over. We just trespassed into some federal facility we only thought was abandoned. We are getting arrested. We all agree we might as well just come out. So we all walk out, into the spotlight, show ourselves, set our camera and tripod down. Chopper hovers there, nothing on loudspeaker. They're just looking at us. And then it turns and flies away. What does this mean? I don't know, just get in the freaking truck. So we all butt out of there, as fast as we can drive. And never saw a sign of the police again. Was probably just a training flight for hours. I used to work at a small airport and we'd get Whirlabad stop by for night practice. They used to have fun hovering and spotlighting us if we came out. I can totally see a pilot going, yay, let's see if we can make these guys pee their pants. It was in the forest behind the neighborhood I lived at as a child. It was called the Abandoned Grease Factory, a pretty spooky place for kids in the neighborhood to visit. Me and a buddy get asked by two kids who are about 3 or 4 years older than us to go check it out. We agree because we thought it would be cool. The two older guys after arriving begin making a crap ton of noise, like banging on walls, shouting, climbing to the top of the building and throwing crap off. Me and my buddy think nothing of it. Well, out of nowhere the two disappear. Me and my buddy begin swearing, trying to figure out where to go. Lo and behold, 3 cops walk out from around the corner and grab us. I guess the two older kids knew that cops come check the place often and they were causing a scene to attract the cops and get us in trouble. We were in 5th grade, I believe. My parents were not happy to see us arrive at the house in the back of the cop car. We then became mortal enemies with the older dudes, always trying to get back at them. Nothing very serious I guess went wrong, but man will I hate those guys forever, haha. Slightly off topic, and not as seriously scary as some of the others, but we went down into the sewers and there was an unexpected rain that night. We popped out before it got too heavy, but man, that could have been bad. I used to live in Virginia when I was younger and I had a good friend that I often stayed over at her house. Her dad had her one weekend and invited me over. We ended up going to his friend's house. It was a beautiful plantation house out in King George, I think, County. 3-story house with a lot of the original Civil War era furniture still inside. Some of the beds and stuff had sheets on them and the Smithsonian was supposed to come out and get the furniture. The guy had gotten a great deal on the house because it was so old and needed work and was apparently haunted. The house was amazing. There were little metal lined holes in the wall in each room where a little fire would go, and I think piping connected them, but I wasn't really sure. There was a small cot in one of the upstairs rooms that still had bullet holes in it, and there were dark spots on the floor that may have been blood, and there were bullet holes in the ceiling. The guy that lived there had a friend come and bless the very bottom floor where he lived. It was like a studio apartment. There was a bathroom, a kitchen-like area, a fireplace and a pull-out couch that he slept on. He told us how there would be footsteps all night throughout the upper floors and banging on the door that led to upstairs, which he obviously kept closed and locked at night. Now, onto the abandoned building part. My friend and I decided to explore the property, which had several slave cabins on it. They were pretty dilapidated and in need of some serious repair when looking from the outside. We decided to go into one and found a lot of furniture and paintings that were in surprisingly good shape. Upon entering the cabin, though, we just got this overwhelming feeling that we were not supposed to be there. It just felt wrong. Like this overwhelming feeling of dread. I told my friend that I felt like some bad things had happened there. We decided to press on and started up a ladder that went to a loft inside the cabin. There were holes in the roof and we could see sunlight coming through. I got up to the top, looked into the loft and just felt like I had to get out of there now. I didn't see any ghosts or bodies. Nothing creepy happened. Nothing moved. I just knew I had to get the frick out of there. I don't know how to describe it other than that. Maybe it was supernatural. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me. But something told my little 13-year-old brain to get out of that slave cabin that day or else. So we did. Me and my friend got the heck up out of there. As soon as we left and had taken a few steps away from the cabin, we could feel the dread and trepidation just melting away. I am in my 30s now and it's an experience that I share all the time because of how intense that emotion was. Even now as I type this, I feel that dread washing over me as I remember those paintings behind the couch in the cabin and how my legs trembled as I climbed the ladder. My middle school friend and I decided to explore an abandoned house which was rumored to be in the woods at the edge of our suburb. The modest wooden home had been abandoned for quite some time and was now fully derelict, and the quantity of suburban graffiti made it obvious that many kids had been there before us. We poked around a while on the first floor, finding nothing of interest. We decided to see if there was anything worth seeing upstairs. We had been upstairs less than a minute when we suddenly found ourselves getting buzzed by some type of very large, very territorial bee. One of them stung me on the shoulder. It hurt like a mother, and I still have a ball of scar tissue just under the skin. 30 years later. Of course I never told my parents. I felt my sting was punishment enough, and apparently it was, since I never again went into a vacant building, at least until I got older. I didn't do it personally, but I used to work for an insurance claim management company that contracted people who did, and I have two stories that stand out. One of our contracted employees entered an abandoned house and went room to room to confirm damages. Dude entered the final room to find out it's been fully decorated to be a satanic shrine. Our contractor saw someone just standing there in the middle of the room and bolted for the exit once he realized there was someone else in there. 2. Lady I was walking through the process of accessing a property we were managing, found a dead body. Appeared to have been recently killed too. Said that the guy was laying in a pool of blood. She quit because of this incident. Bonus story. We once received the full report done by one of our contractors for a home that was in a newer suburban development. Apparently the property had some serious piping plumbing damage because the interior of the home was completely covered in mold. 2-story home and it was just mold city. So bad that the wood in the walls were practically melting. I couldn't help but think how this is a health hazard for the neighboring homes in the area, and I would been livid if I lived there. It wasn't really wrong per se, but incredibly gross nevertheless. I was exploring an abandoned gas station, which happened to also have some abandoned mobile homes on its property. As I walked through the mobile home, my friend was complaining of a foul smell. I couldn't smell anything as I was wearing my gas mask to protect from asbestos, and I wandered into a room, only to discover someone had covered it with feces, walls painted with poop, floors covered in neat little piles, and a filthy mattress. As soon as I got outside and took my mask off, the smell hit me and I lost my lunch in some tall grass. When I was about 12-13, me and a good friend of mine used to visit a rural woodland area near our houses, but soon found that the forest was like a bowl shape and the rim was around some construction sites. Anyway, we climb up the forest walls, which were super steep, and we made a lot of grunting noises as we were climbing up. We keep walking up and climb under over a fence and the whole construction site is completely silent. There's like nothing there except a skip and weeds growing every which way. It's definitely been abandoned for a while. Anyway, we did this a few times in the space of several months, and one time I decide to journey to this area by myself and check it out. So I get there, and as I'm on my way to the bowl part, I stop and get my bearings right when a pretty big stick hits me really hard in the back of the head. I turn around and there's no one there. I even shout who's there and then pretend to laugh, assuming it's someone from my school playing a prank on me, but there's no answer. Now the stick that hit me wasn't just dropping from a tree, it came sideways, like an arrow almost down the aisle of the path I was walking down. I remember looking around and upwards, thinking that it's crazy how I'm here completely alone. Anyway, I left straight away, mentioned it to my brother, who mentioned it might have been some exceptionally deadly owl that nips people's necks ears, and then never mentioned it again because the thought of being there not alone is freaky. That's my mediocre story. I got hit by a stick and retreated back home. So in my town there is an abandoned paper mill. As dumb teenagers do, my friends and I decided to explore it. We knew of some other kids in our high school who go there regularly, so we thought nothing of it. So we had been there for maybe 20 minutes or so and we just see a dark figure and hear a loud hey. Knowing that we were busted, we started to run into a dead end. Turns out it was the owner of the mill. He was a really nice guy and he gave us a tour. His vision was to turn that place into a 5-star restaurant, but until then he would rent out the space for film crews. A few horror movies had been filmed there. He was there just checking up on the place and sectioning off the places the floor was weakening. He honestly probably saved one of us a trip to the ER because the floors looked fine till you put any pressure on them. We felt bad, so we showed him where the hole in the fence was so he could seal it later. That's actually very understanding of him. And cool that you guys gave back his niceness by telling him about the hole. I went into this creepy abandoned mansion that was also used as a mental institution before it was abandoned. Didn't even expect to get in, but a connecting building had an opening and I just wound up in the mansion. Anyway, super cool place. Right out of a horror movie. As I'm finishing up exploring the place, I come up on a room on the top floor. Door was open and as I walked in I noticed a sign. It read, "Warning, high levels of asbestos in this area. If you have been exposed, go to nearby hospital immediately." Tried to breathe as little as possible as I booked it out of there. Didn't go to the hospital because I doubt I could have been exposed to so much asbestos I'll have problems. And even if I was, there's nothing a hospital is going to be able to do anyway. Instead I went home, threw all my clothes in the wash, took a shower, and bought a gas mask for future explorations. Asbestos doesn't work that way. It has been turned into something similar to nuclear fallout, but it takes repeated exposure of it and does form to harm you. My husband grew up on the east side of Chicago, on the Indiana border. There was an abandoned brewery there, called Falstaff, I believe. The kids from the neighborhood would always go and explore all around it at night. Well, a small group went, and one of the boys fell like their stories into an old granary, and his friends got scared and ran away, leaving him there. Come morning, there was a big search for the missing boy, but his friends were too scared to admit what had happened. After a night or two, one of them was having nightmares and terrible anxiety and came clean to his parents. Parents called the cops, and they found the boy, who had died. But apparently he survived in that granary for some unknown length of time, and may have survived if he was found quickly, though this may just be urban legend. It was incredibly horrific. My husband knew the kids and was there during the searches and aftermath. Real nightmare fuel. You can find the Tribune article by googling. I believe this happened in the very early 1990s. I was on the roof of an abandoned house with a friend, just to smoke some weed and talk peacefully. My friend got up to go pee. After a step, part of the roof collapsed and my mate fell to the floor below and got hurt with a leg injury. Pay close attention to the abandoned places. It can become dangerous. Dang. I am glad it was not worse. I wasn't present, but I had a friend who had a similar fall while trying to take photography in an abandoned building. Fell 2 stories and broke a rib and arm. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.